Hello and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. My name is Will Lindis, and we husky, hairy, huggable homos get together each week to talk about the thing that is nearest and dearest to all of our hearts, movies. Of course, I'm not here alone this week. I'm joined by my lovable co-host, Jim Pugliafico. How's you doing, Jim?
Hey, Will. I'm doing great. We're recording this on a Friday. Luckily, I had the day off from work. I know you just got off of work. Brad, unfortunately, has some work things to close out his day here on the kind of in the Pacific time zone. But I'm sure he'd love to be on with us. But we're gonna try to hold it up, just the two of us.
I gotta say, I always like it best when we are a triple threat instead of a tag team. I think that's when our show, at least for me, is the most fun, when we have all three of our voices sort of in here. But, the show must go on, and I'm absolutely delighted to spend this Friday afternoon with you, Jim.
Yeah, this is going to be great.
Especially talking about this subject. So this is something that is especially near and dear to our hearts. It's South by Southwest 2019. Brad, Jim, and myself had a chance to, well, I was going to say travel to Austin, Texas. It's in my backyard. I live here. But we had a chance to spend a long week here in Austin, Texas at the South by Southwest Film Festival, where we binged movie after movie after movie. I don't know what the final count was. It was somewhere probably around 30 that we each individually saw. More once you add up the fact that we saw different things in some slots. Jim, can you tell our listeners a little bit about what South by Southwest is, what we do there, and a little bit about what happened to us this year?
Yeah. Of course, South by Southwest isn't just a film festival. South by Southwest is a big, let's just say, multimedia festival. It's known for, I would say, primarily music, with film being a close second. But there's all kinds of other stuff going on besides film and music. We have there's a whole interactive track where there's VR technology, advances being on display. There's, all kinds of educational panels and so forth. So you have all that track, but and then of course you have your music, which I think people probably recognize South by Southwest for, and then you have like a world-class film festival on top of that, which is of course what we go to. And I haven't been to too many other film festivals, to be honest. And, the majority of my film festival experience is through South by, and I've grown to love going to it. We'll talk about kind of the films that they program, maybe versus other kind of festivals. Austin has its own genre film festival called Fantastic Fest. However, I noticed this year that South by Southwest kind of swings a little bit more than maybe your normal high-profile film festivals. Steers a little bit more into genre, and especially into comedy, than a lot of other film festivals, and that's a good thing. We're going to talk about some of these films that we saw, but yeah, we love going. Saw a ton of films, like you said. I think my final count was right around 32, and probably could have snuck in a few more, but I think by the end of 8 days of screenings, 4 and 5 movies a day, I had sated myself, my hunger for new films. And some of these films, of course, you don't know anything going into them at all. You're going into a screening really not knowing much about the film. You might see a little thumbnail photo, you might read a little blurb and see who's in it and who the director is, and that's about it. That's all you get. And so just based on that, you could see that there's a lot of opportunity for big surprises. And boy, there were definitely some that we're going to talk about.
I think that's what's so much fun about South by Southwest, or one of the fun things. I mean, I think my favorite part of it is it's our annual get together. It's our retreat. It's my chance to spend just like an immersive week with you and Brad. And of course, that's my favorite part. We've been doing this for I think that's our 5th or 6th year doing South by coverage as well. So it's not just an event now; it's tradition. But aside from that, the films at South by Southwest always have an edge of cool. I think that's kind of what they go for when they're programming, and that means like obviously the music tie-ins. There's a lot of really cool like music documentaries and music related narratives. There's a lot of high profile like premieres, especially ones that are going to come out kind of in the April through August range, which are like, yeah, like you mentioned, the gutbuster comedies or the edge of your seat horrors or the action flicks that, you know, everyone's going to be talking about. And so I think this whole festival just sort of bleeds like weird and cool, which are things that are part of the Austin culture and experience. And one of the films that I'd like to maybe start us off with, that I think is one that was full of a lot of laughs and hopefully will be one that we have some kind words to say about, is the movie called Good Boys. Good Boys is one that you and I saw together, I believe, Jim. At this point, though, I'll be honest, I may say, oh, we saw this together, and you may say, no, we didn't see that, Will, because they do blur together so much. But I think we saw this one together. Good Boys is a movie that's done by the Superbad like writing team. You know, so you got that kind of that level of humor, but instead of it being a few like high schoolers who are getting involved in all of these antics, you're dealing with 3 6th grade boys, primarily like led by Jacob Tremblay, you know, the kid from Room. Well, now he's in a Superbad-esque comedy, dropping F-bombs left and right. It's a movie about these 3 kids who go in this kind of wild goose chase around town because of, well, just some stuff that happens with their friendship and with some prized possessions and kind of how those things interact with one another. So we got to see the world premiere of this movie. It's not coming out until August 16th. Jim, what'd you think about it?
Oh, Good Boys. I really, really enjoyed it. I really liked it. Superbad is one of my favorite comedies of all time for its crudeness, its kind of edginess. And this movie has kind of that exact same flavor. Of course, the hook with this movie is that it is an R-rated movie. It's for language and, you know, sexual. I mean, we don't see any sex on the screen, of course, but there's a lot of sexual. No. There's a lot of sexual situations, you know, that these kids unwittingly kind of fall into, like, let's say it's sexual innuendo, I guess, right? And it's an R, and the movie is using that R rating, I think, in marketing. As a matter of fact, if you look at the poster for the movie, there's a big R, you know, MPAA R rated thing, like right in the middle of the poster. So they want you to know that they're going to go for it. And this movie is really more than just a bunch of 6th grade. What how old is that? Like 11? I don't know.
12-ish.
Yeah, 11 or 12-year-old kids, you know, dropping F-bombs all over the place. There's these kids get in some really hilarious situations. And there's a message in this movie, you know, that has to do with friendship and how, as we grow up, like, sometimes our friendships are impacted by other things that might happen in our lives. And it's kind of a bittersweet message that I didn't really expect in a movie like this. And it did kind of hit me a little bit.
It's sort of surprising, right? Yeah. Like, I don't know about you, but I walked into this one thinking like, okay, it'll be worth a few laughs. Like, I honestly wasn't expecting very much of it outside of the novelty of seeing, you know, like I mentioned, the kid from Room dropping F-bombs.
Yeah, right.
Right. I walked out of this being one of my favorite films at the festival, surprisingly so. The laughs are intense. Like, this is a really, really funny movie, but it also has a pretty sincere message of friendship and what it's like to sort of grow up with and maybe even kind of grow separate from like these tight friendships that you have in your life and what that means and how do you deal with that when you're a different person than the person you were last year or the grade before or whatever. This is an incredibly smart movie, just in the way it utilizes its comedy and the way it uses its all 3 of its leads. This one's Definitely a gut buster.
Yeah, I think of course, one thing, let's explain this about South by Southwest. All of the big premiere films, kind of the films that you think might have potential to be like tentpole films, quote unquote, typically premiere in a theater called the Paramount Theater. It's in downtown Austin, and it's a 1,200 seat, like old time, like movie house with a balcony and everything. So you've got 1,200 people in there that are jazzed up to see a movie, and they're seeing this comedy, and the movie is so hilarious in spots that people are laughing through like 2 and 3 lines of dialogue after the initial joke. So it's and the audience kind of feeds off itself that way. Like when people around you are enjoying it, I think you tend to enjoy things more, right? Than sitting in a theater that has like 12 people in it, and no one can barely see each other. So that's a great environment to see this. However, I think of all the films that I've seen at South by this year, I think Good Boys probably has the potential to do well, on a wide release. I love, there's a lot of movies that I loved at South by this year, and I won't say I liked Good Boys the best, but I think of the ones that I did like, I think this one has the best chance to kind of make waves, maybe at the box office.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good disclaimer that any of the movies that we're talking about, we got to see through festival lenses, and festival lenses very much change the way you watch a movie. When, like you mentioned, like there's 1,100, 1,200 people behind you that are just laughing as loud as they can, you can't help but have a good time. Right. Same thing with the horror movies. Like when everyone just like in that type of a reaction, these are people that want to be in this experience. And there's also kind of the electricity of being at the world premiere and knowing that the actors are sitting like 2 feet away from you. And so there's like this current that goes through the air, like everyone gasps, everyone cheers. And so it's not always indicative of what the normal viewing experience might be. So disclaimer for everything that we're talking about today. It's not gonna, you may not have the same experience in your, your Cinema 10 back home. But again, I think this is one that has, you're absolutely right. This one has a lot of crossover appeal. I think a lot of audiences are going to have a good time with this. It's got that, even though he's not directly involved with it, it definitely has like the better elements of like that Judd Apatow style humor. And so this one is available, like this one's going to be out fairly soon, August 16th. So you got to wait a few more months. But keep an eye out for the trailers. There's some really funny Red Band trailers already for this one. It's called Good Boys, and it's coming to a theater near you soon.
Right.
Jim.
Yeah.
What do you got for me?
I'm going to keep the comedy train going for a little bit, and we'll switch gears a little bit because eventually we'll run out of great comedies. Because, like I said, I think that was the strong point of South by this year, actually, compared to other years. But what I want to bring up is a movie that kind of snuck up on me because I didn't really know much about it going in. As we said, this is a movie called Little Monsters, and this movie is kind of a crazy one. It stars Lupita Nyong'o, Josh Gad, and a gentleman named Stephen Peacock, I think, right? That I don't, I don't really know much about him yet. But the movie is about basically Lupita Nyong'o is a sweet, gentle, like think of the best, most sweetest kindergarten teacher you could ever want, either for your kid or for yourself if you were in kindergarten. Josh Gad plays like a children's entertainer, kind of like a clownish, I don't even know how to describe him. And Stephen Peacock plays a washed-up musician who teams up with Lupita Nyong'o and gets roped into being a chaperone on a kids' field trip where a zombie outbreak suddenly happens, and craziness ensues. It sounds like a horror movie, and it is a little bit, but I would say it's definitely more leaning into the comedy of the situation and not really into horror. This one, again, had the audience in stitches in places. And of course, I love Lupita Nyong'o. Seeing her play and seeing her in this role is, I'd never really had seen kind of the sweet side of her. And And she also plays ukulele, by the way. And that's not a spoiler. That's on the poster. So, yeah, this is one I don't know how much, how this one's going to be released. But with names like Lupita Nyong'o and Josh Gad, you think it's probably going to get some kind of release, maybe even a VOD release. I don't know, but keep an eye out for it. It's called Little Monsters.
I think that's a really good pick, too. This was the second film that we saw at the festival, and it was also the second film we saw starring Lupita Nyong'o, which made for a really fun theming for our festival. Couple of interesting things to note about this one. This is the second, I think it's the second film. It's the second film by a director, Abe Forsyth, that I've seen. He did a film. He's an Australian kind of black comedy director. He did this really, really interesting and really fucked up comedy in like 2016 called Down Under, which was about the aftermath of these riots in Australia, these kind of infamous like race riots, and starring two different cars of two different people from different sides of the race riots as they're kind of on this like almost literal collision course. It played at, I think, Fantastic Fest a few years ago. So yeah, I really like that we get to see some of those same sensibilities here with Little Monsters, but also, again, this one I think is polished up enough that I think would play with maybe not every single audience, but I think that for comedy horror hybrids, I think that this one is pretty much this one will play with most audiences well enough. If you like Shaun of the Dead, if you liked Tucker and Dale versus Evil or something like that, I think you're going to get a lot out of this one. Lupita Nyong'o is great. She's absolutely wonderful in this. I think Josh Gad is an absolute he slays in this, and he's
way over the top, right?
He's way over the top. I feel like, maybe I could have used with just a tad less Josh Gad, but I do like what he did with the character. So ultimately, it was a really fun watch.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I don't want to give away too much about the Josh Gad character because it's kind of a surprise in the movie. But I'll just say he went so far over the top. Like, I wouldn't be surprised, since Josh Gad does a lot of Disney films, if some executive at Disney maybe had a word with him after the movie. But
did Olaf just say the C word?
Did Olaf just do that?
The C word.
Did he just do that thing I just saw him do? Oh boy. But yeah, Little Monsters, I think that's one I'm probably going to rewatch when it comes back out.
So what else? I feel like I want to keep us on the at least for right now. We'll break from this very soon, but I kind of want to keep us on the movies that we've both seen train at least for one film longer, and talk about a pretty notable world premiere that we caught there, and it was for the movie Beach Bum, or I guess actually it's Beach Bum. Yeah, so The Beach Bum. This is a movie, and of course, I didn't pull up notes. I'm just going to wing this one. This is the latest movie by Harmony Korine, who you know who Harmony Korine is, even if you don't know his name. This is the dude that directed Kids and Gummo and Spring Breakers pretty infamously a few years ago. This is a guy who enjoys sort of films about nihilistic excess set against bright neon pastiches, and here he's got the perfect muse in Matthew McConaughey, who's this character named Moondog, this like stoner who has way more money than he needs and kind of goes on this adventure as he escapes from and ultimately goes towards responsibility. The marketing for this was bonkers. Even as we're standing in line getting ready for this one, they gave us these scratch and sniff cards that smelled like different strains of like weed. So you got these like scratch and sniff weed cards, like getting ready to go into this movie with like, hey, during this scene, scratch this one. During this one, scratch. So that's the type of movie that you're getting. And I bring this one up. I think the audience that was with us absolutely loved this movie. I think it went over very well. I think a big part of that is McConaughey is a hometown hero. He's very infamously from Austin and shows up at a lot of these events. And the movie features so many like very memorable kind of like short scene characters, people who just pop up for just a moment, like Snoop Dogg and Zac Efron and Jimmy Buffett and Jonah Hill, and probably my favorite was Martin Lawrence.
Yeah,
I will say,
Martin Lawrence.
I would say overall, like this one probably didn't click with me as much as it did the rest of the audiences. I don't know if I'm just not on the same wavelength as Harmony Korine as I was with maybe Spring Breakers. If some of the like the kind of the irreverence just didn't work as well for me. I don't know what it was. There were some really fun scenes, but the whole movie wasn't my favorite. But Jim, maybe you had a different experience.
No, I think I'm right there along with you. I think this movie like had its moments. I just don't think I am its target audience. I'm not really like, put it this way: if you're a person who loves the stoner comedies and stoner movies, I think that's kind of the genre label that we're putting on this. I think this might be right up your alley because it's basically 90 minutes of Matthew McConaughey, who's practically on screen for the whole movie, being wasted, doing doing some outlandish stuff, and just really being crazy. I just wish there was a little bit more story to it for me, but I still respect Matthew McConaughey. I'm not a Matthew lover or a hater. I respect a lot of what he does. I loved him in Mud, if you remember Mud from 5-6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He was great in that, and I've loved him in a few other movies. I just think the stoner aesthetic is not just doesn't click with me either. Will, but this was one that was a bit divisive at the festival. People either really loved it or they just kind of like I didn't really like that. So.
And this one's very timely because let's see, today as we're recording, it is March 29th, and looks like yes, its scheduled release date is March 29th. So I don't know how wide a rollout it's getting.
Oh, it's in the megaplexes. We've got it in Cinemark today.
Oh yeah,
okay. Yeah.
I mean that's good for Neon, like the as a distributor, because not that they do like super indie stuff, but a lot of their films usually have this sort of ramp up to the megaplex. Like we saw that with Colossal and with that Aubrey Plaza movie that also had I can't remember it, but anyway, a few of them, the Neon releases usually ramp up a little bit more. So I'm kind of excited that they're going so strong with this one. Well, Jim, maybe this one didn't click as much with us, but maybe the next one will. What have you got?
Maybe. I don't know if you've seen any of the rest of the ones that I might bring up, and that's that just speaks to the quality of the films at South by this year. Like we each saw, some of the same films, and then we saw a bunch of films, not together, and a lot of those end up really good too. The one I want to bring up is a film called The Peanut Butter Falcon.
Did not see this one, and actually we haven't talked about this one yet, so
right.
I'm coming into this one completely blank slate.
All right. Well, I try not to spoil you other than what's kind of on in the summary here. This one stars Shia LaBeouf and Dakota Johnson, along with an actor, kind of a new face that we haven't seen, Zach Gottsagen, who plays a young man with Down syndrome who lives in an assisted living community, I guess. But he has these dreams of becoming, in the home that he lives in. The entertainment they have is limited to what they have on VHS tapes hanging around, and he's been watching a lot of pro wrestling, and he wants to be a wrestler. And he runs away from the nursing home, and he kind of runs into the character played by Shia LaBeouf, who's his name is Tyler, who's kind of on the run from the law and from some other guys that want to do him in. But think of like Mark Twain set in a modern era, and they end up kind of as a unlikely team up, trying to fulfill Zach's dream and also so Shia character Tyler is kind of on the run. I really love this movie. It has a lot of heart. Dakota Johnson, I know she gets knocked around a little bit because she was in all of the 50 Shades movies. So I hope she gets to shake that a little bit. But Dakota Johnson's got the chops. I really, really love what she does. She's got a medium to small part in this movie, but it's really great. I think the chemistry between Shia LaBeouf, this is probably, I know there was another movie at Sundance this year that he wrote and starred in called Sunny Boy or Sunny Boy or something. But that guy, man, he's amazing in this movie. And I hope when this movie comes out that it gets some kind of release where people can see it. It's called The Peanut Butter Falcon.
Yeah, I think Dakota Johnson really gets a bad rap. And it's the same thing that happened with, I don't think she's quite on the same level as this, but it's the same thing that happened with Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson after the Twilight movies. Like for years, and to this day, you still get a lot of people saying like, "Oh, Kristen Stewart's a bad actress." No, she played the lead in a movie that was unpopular. Well, that was
right.
That was like that you both loved and loved to hate.
Right.
She is an exceptional actress in her entire body of work. I think Dakota Johnson, when you talk about the problems with 50 Shades, and there are problems with 50 Shades,
sure,
the problems don't laugh. The problems aren't with Dakota Johnson.
No.
And I think this year alone, not only did we have that, or by this year, like within the last calendar year, she was in Bad Times at the El Royale.
Yes.
Which was a very, very fun role.
Awesome movie. Yeah.
And she was the lead in the Suspiria remake by Luca Guadagnino, which, I mean, it made my top 10 of last year. So, Dakota Johnson, I don't think she's quite at the level as Kristen Stewart yet. I think she's probably still at the part of her career where she's building up her resume, but I do think that she doesn't get enough credit for what she does. And looking at this roster, Jim, like, I feel bad for having missed this one. You mentioned Shia LaBeouf and Dakota Johnson. I love Bruce Dern. John Hawkes can do absolutely
John Hawkes. Oh my God. Yeah.
Then some of the wrestlers here, like I grew up on 90s and early aughts wrestling. Like, I don't know what's happening with it right now, but like I see that both Jake Roberts, Jake the Snake Roberts,
yep,
and Mick Foley are in this. And I'm thinking just like honestly, like 9-year-old Will is just screaming at me, just like, why the fuck did you not go see this one? Right. So I'm excited to catch up with it.
Well, I'm bummed that you missed it too, Will. This one actually ended up winning the audience award for narrative for South by. So this got one of the buzz screenings there too. Interesting about this. So I'm waiting in line to see this movie, or in the lobby, because I had a express pass, which allows us to get in a little bit ahead of the crowd. And I see this young man who's in here, obviously in the lobby, and he's very gregarious. He's going around shaking everybody's hand, saying hello, and he is Zach Gottsagen. He was the star of this movie, and he's going around like, "Hey, welcome to my movie." He was so excited. And not only that, I got to meet, just by chance, his two moms. Were standing in the lobby waiting to go in, and they're like, come sit with us. We started talking, like, I told them, I was with the Movie Bears podcast. And he's, "Oh, Bears, we know about Bears. Come sit with us." And so I was sitting next to them during the movie, and it was a really awesome experience, because they're explaining to me, not during the movie, but before and after, like, "Oh, he and Shia developed this really special friendship during the movie." And it was really a special experience. So I'm glad for that. And that's why I'm glad for South by, because it gives us the opportunity to have those experiences. And also I love the fact that this movie in terms of representation, right? You have a character who's got Down syndrome, and you've got an actor who has Down syndrome, who's able to play this part and do it really well and convincingly. So, yep, that's a Peanut Butter Falcon. So, Will, I know you'll be looking for it when it comes out.
I think that probably at the same time that you saw this one is when I saw the next one that I'm going to rave about.
I know which one it is.
Hopefully so, because I think we had some fun little diversions. This is like a choose your own adventure where you don't turn the page and die. Like both pages that we turned to ended up with awesome movies. So the one that I want to plug is one that we had a chance to talk to the filmmakers about in our Aglyph preview podcast, which is actually up right now live. We'll talk about it here in a little bit. But one of the films, it's called Mother's Little Helpers. And this is a movie that I don't believe it has full distribution yet. I could be wrong about that, or maybe something new has come out. The movie is a family comedy drama, like a dramedy style movie about these 4 siblings. They're like adult siblings. So, you know, these are people who have gone off into the world and made their own way. They were all raised by this kind of hippie flower child, but also like maybe a little emotionally manipulative and compulsively like full of herself mother. And now the mother has a terminal illness, and all 4 of the adult siblings have to come back and spend time with her, getting her affairs in order during her final days, which, oh boy, that's heavy, right? The mother is played by Melanie Hutzel, who is old school Saturday Night Live alum, which was pretty exciting to not only see her in that, but also to talk with her at the during our Aglyph interviews. But this film featured one of my absolute favorite performances of the entire festival. And it was the actor, and of course now I don't have it up, and it doesn't that talk to way it works. Well, it's yeah, and well, not only that, the IMDb is in an opposite order. But there he is, Sam Littlefield, who plays Jude.
We did talk to him.
He's the one that we talked to. So of the 4 different siblings, one of them is a gay guy who has you find out that he's run into some problems in his past and is under like house arrest with like the ankle bracelet and everything. And so in the midst of him dealing with, you know, not only the stuff with his mother and the stuff with his siblings and the stuff that led him to the ankle bracelet and all of that, you also have some very touching moments as he connects with his parole officers, like one of the strongest like relationships in his life. This movie is remarkably funny. This movie is remarkably sad. It reminds me a lot of a movie that we watched a couple years ago that I absolutely loved. I believe it was called Other People, which was another movie featuring a Saturday Night Live alum with the terminal illness and her child coming home to deal with it. So maybe maybe this is my
that one had Jesse Plemons in it, if I remember.
That was Jesse Plemons, and Molly Shannon played the mom.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, this movie, my entire row, I looked down and we are just like face wet at the end, but also like smiling, like just that combination of just, I love what I just saw. I was hurt by what I just saw, but I was also like rebuilt by what I just saw. It's called Mother's Little Helpers, and I don't know when or where that's going to be available, but please keep an eye out for it.
Yeah, man, this is kind of this is where we get into the regrets of the festival, right?
Yeah.
I regret that I did not get a chance to see that, especially after talking to the cast at the Aglyph brunch, which our listeners will get a chance to hear. But that was such an interesting experience because we're set up for these interviews in the Iron Bear in Austin, and the filmmakers are kind of coming down to us to talk. And I saw this crew pull up, the Melanie Hutzel, and I instantly recognized her face, and I'm like, but it's one of those moments where you recognize like a person's face and you can't remember her name or where the heck you saw her before. And then it came to me like a couple minutes later that, yeah, she's an old SNL alumnus with, Chris Farley. You know what I mean?
The Van Down by the River. Yeah.
The Van Down by the River. Right? She's in that sketch. So she's the sister, I think, in that sketch. And many other sketches that they did. So
you pulled it up on your phone right afterwards.
I did. I'm like, it was great. Is this who I think it is? Yeah.
That's her, right? That's her. Flipping your phone over and we're all just,
of course I didn't. Oh, God. But I didn't, of course I didn't do that to her or for her. I mean, this was about the film she was there for. Sorry, I didn't see that one. There's another one you're probably going to bring up in a little while that I didn't get to see that I'm a little ticked off about not getting to see also. But yeah,
so that's thing about this one, right? That there's so many like really good picks that you just can't, you know, you can't really go wrong at a festival like this.
No.
Jim, tell me about another one that I'm probably going to regret having missed.
I'm going to bring up one called Adopt a Highway.
Okay. I regret having missed this one.
This is an odd name for a movie. But as soon as I saw who was in it, I said, I have to see this because I love this actor. This is Ethan Hawke. Ethan Hawke, as you know, from the Before series of movies. God, we see him in everything these days, right? And just love that guy to pieces. And this is Adopt a Highway. And he's basically, he's an ex-felon. This is not a spoiler. He sprung from prison at the beginning of the movie after like 20 years in prison for one of those 3 strike crimes that happened back in like the 80s and 90s. Yeah. And it was a pretty minor offense, but he got locked up under one of those mandatory sentencing things. So he gets out in 20 years. His family's all gone. And he discovers he's trying to make it in the real world, and he discovers a live baby left in a dumpster. And then things go kind of in strange directions after that. It's not super dramatic or like over the top, like, you know, running from the law, all this stuff, but it's kind of like you put yourself in this character's shoes, and it's kind of an exercise in empathy, like, because you empathize with this character right from the get-go, and then he's put in these situations where he's never used a computer before, you know what I mean, and he's trying to, you know, keep tabs with his parole officer and all this stuff, and Ethan Hawke is incredible. A lot of heart in this movie. This movie's only an hour and 20 minutes long. I love it. I know it's probably going to get some kind of release because it has Ethan Hawke's name attached to it. Look for it. It's called Adopt a Highway.
Interesting thing about this one. Yeah, I regret missing this one as well for 2 reasons. Obviously, Ethan Hawke is just like, he might be our best like working actor right now.
And the director, right? You're going to mention that.
The director's the other one.
Go ahead, Will. Mention. I forgot to mention who it's directed by and written by the way.
Which is like makes for an amazing career turn or kind of the, you know, evolution for Logan Marshall Green. This is the dude who you probably most recently remember him, and when we raved about him in Upgrade, the kind of action thriller. It was like the better version of Venom that came out last year. He's also the lead in Karen Kusama's The Invitation, which we also enjoyed from South by. So this is a dude who is definitely been carving out this role for himself as an actor, and then all of a sudden, like, oh yeah, he's also like this solid writer and director as well. So and would you say that like was this like an actor showpiece, or did like the script and direction carry too?
Definitely the script, I think, carries this one. And it, you know, there isn't much in terms of like a directional stamp, I would say, on this movie. But what's astounding about it, like, you have this guy who comes off playing this action crime thriller, you know, sci-fi thriller thing in Upgrade, and he's totally turning the tables and doing this sensitive character piece with a lot of heart. Just an amazing turn, and working with a guy like Ethan Hawke. You know, Logan Marshall Green actually showed up for the Q&A, so it was awesome to hear him talk about, you know, his humbleness and, you know, and talking and getting a chance to work with a guy like Ethan Hawke, because Ethan Hawke, he comes across as one of those guys where Ethan Hawke could be directing films. He may have, I just haven't looked it up, but he could be directing films, I'm sure, right? And he's been in so many films. I think he's probably kind of a director's actor. You know what I mean? Where he is such a collaborative, contributor to a film that it's probably going to be a win-win situation for those guys. So it's got to be the way these, you know, that you could tell that the chemistry between the actor and director was there. But I can't wait to see this one again with Brad, because he didn't get to see it.
Well, let me know when, and if I happen to be in the Tucson area, I will join you for it.
Sure.
So I'd like to pivot, because it's topical based on what we just talked about, to another film that was directed by an actor who is sort of like shifting gears. And it's the movie Booksmart, directed by Olivia Wilde. This is another coming of age comedy. Like you mentioned, this was a killer year for comedies at the festival. Booksmart is right up there with the best of what I saw. It stars these two girls who are in high school, like it's their senior year, and they're like the go-getter, like we get good grades, we're getting into good schools, like that's who they are. And they're two best friends, inseparable. Well, they sort of realize, like on the eve of their graduation, that all of the kids that they sort of thought were like going nowhere or that weren't as good as them were also getting into pretty good schools, but also had an amazing time in high school. And so now they're just filled with regret. Like, did we waste our entire high school experience? Let's have one absolutely killer night where we just cram 4 years of fun into this one night. And of course, hilarity ensues. This is a movie that feels like, it's so funny. We have Good Boys, which is like, I hate doing over too many comparisons, but like, Good Boys is sort of like Superbad for tweens. And Booksmart takes some of the same humor beats as what you had in Super Beats, but kind of shifts it to this, to a story about these two girls. And it's really good and it's really funny and it gets to some pretty like outlandish stuff, while also being one thing I really liked about this movie was never really mean-spirited towards its supporting cast members. Like, I think a lot of times, like the burnouts or the party kids or the vapid kids or the stoners or whatever,
jocks.
Like it's really easy. The jocks, it's really easy to take a group and be like, oh, well, these are the dumb ones, or these are the mean ones, and these are the bad ones because our protagonists are the good ones. And this film found good things to say about every character from every clique in this school. And I thought that was it was a lot of fun. It was also neat to see some pretty interesting supporting roles in this one, because Olivia Wilde, her husband is Jason Sudeikis, so he has a very funny role in this, and because of him, or maybe not because of him, but I think that there's definitely some it helps. Like, you do get to see some Saturday Night Live adjacent people show up. Will Forte shows up for a little bit in this movie. Will Forte, who, by the way,
wasn't he also in Good Boys?
He was also in Good Boys, and he was also in Extraordinary. I saw him in 3 movies at South by Southwest this year. It was just like, Will Forte is definitely friend of the festival. But yeah, and Jessica Williams is in this. She did Comedy Central, the Daily Show, stand-up comedy as well. She's just a great person. So yeah, Booksmart, it comes out in May 24th. It's probably going to get a fairly wide release. And I think you should check it out. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, this one will, again, this is the one that I really regret missing, because it was, one of the things that happens at these festivals as a few days in, is that people have had a chance to see these films maybe one time, early in the week. Most films have 2 or 3 screenings throughout the week. Yeah. And when a film like this, these films create buzz within the festival itself, right? And within the people going to see the movie. So you'll hear from other people that you're standing with in line on Tuesday what they saw on Monday. Or, hey, what did you just see? What did you just see? Did you see anything this morning? How was it? And Booksmart was the one, I think, that got probably the most buzz that I can recall from the week. And again, I'm just a little bit disappointed that I didn't get to see that. But then again, I think this one does have a chance at a wide release, given what I've heard about it. Again, another great comedy that may come out of South by Southwest. So, and we're talking about female voices here, right? We're talking about a female director. We're talking about 2 female leads. So, female writers. So I think this is a good sign for films in the future. And I'd like to see this, I can't wait to see it, number one. And I hope that it does well coming out of the festival.
So Jim, I'm going to spring a bonus round on us here in a moment, but before
I thought you said I thought that's not what I thought you were going to say. I thought you said you spring a boner. I'm like, what?
I mean, who knows?
You got to stand up.
This is a live stream. Anything can happen. Bonus round will happen here in a moment, but before we get to that, I think we've got time for one last feature to discuss. So, not too much pressure, Jim, but you have to pick what it is, and don't let it be a bad one.
Wow, no, it's not I got too many good ones to talk about.
Right?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about a movie. Again, another one that really kind of just snuck up on me and surprised me. This one's called Olympic Dreams. And this one, it's written by Nick Kroll and Alexi Pappas, who also are the stars of the film. Directed by a guy named Jeremy Teacher. I haven't looked that one up. It's got some, for us gay men, I don't know if the name Gus Kenworthy rings a bell. He is a gay. He was like the first openly gay American Olympic athlete. He's a skier. If you've seen him, he's kind of bearish. I'm sure some of our listeners will know who this name is. He makes an appearance in the film that's really good. This movie is interesting. It's like the first movie that was allowed to be filmed on location at an actual games in the Olympic Village. And this was in the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics in Korea in 2018. So you could think of this movie, and I need to get out of the habit of kind of comparing movies to other movies, but this one is kind of like a Lost in Translation movie. It's a really quiet, really genuine and honest relationship movie that develops between the Nick Kroll character, who is playing a volunteer dentist. Of course, at these Olympic Games, a lot of professionals are hired or offered to come to the games on a volunteer basis. And he happens to be a dentist, and he comes into the games and he's learning about the athletes while he's there, and, cleaning teeth and filling cavities and stuff. And Alexi Pappas is one of the athletes. She's a cross-country skier from the US. And she's there. She's feeling very lonesome, very alone. The Olympics aren't going great for her. She just feels kind of lost a little bit. So they kind of gravitate together, and I'm not going to say sparks fly, because it's not that kind of a relationship movie. It's just a really sweet, kind of innocent relationship, I will say, between these two that develops a special friendship. I love this movie. It's really quiet. It's like only an hour and 20 minutes long. I do like Nick Kroll. Both these leads are great. It's called Olympic Dreams.
Definitely want to check that one out. Even the story of how they just filmed it while actually there, sounds so impressive to me. Probably isn't, it sounds like the story itself is good as well. But
that's how they got real athletes. Like, that's how they got real Olympic athletes, that are competing actually into the film and in speaking parts, which I find pretty amazing. And this one is a quiet one, but I think people are going to love it.
All right, so here's that bonus round I was going to mention, because I knew that we were going to, we usually try to, when we're talking about these, talk generally about films that we think people are going to get a chance to see and that we really enjoyed and all of that. But I know that one of the things that we also enjoy quite a bit are documentaries and short films. So maybe we won't go as long on this one, but Jim, let's start with documentaries. What was your favorite documentary that you saw?
I'm going to have to say it was a documentary called Human Nature. This was a documentary about a breakthrough in genetic engineering and gene splicing, I guess you could call it, and called CRISPR. You may have heard this term brought up in popular culture, in other TV shows, as kind of some kind of magic thing they can do with genetics. Well, guess what? It's not magic. It's real science. And this movie explains what CRISPR is in a very, and this stuff is very complex technologically, right? This movie explains it in a very relatable way. It doesn't dumb it down too much, and it doesn't try to talk over our heads. It's just perfect. And also brings up a lot of ethical issues that are coming about because of CRISPR technology that is at hand right now. That scientists can alter human traits of people either that are already living and alive or in the womb. And some of these traits, you know, you might consider, you know, some people consider this playing God and all kinds of things. It's really interesting. It's called Human Nature. You'll definitely see this one popping up on VOD, I'm sure.
Yeah, this was a really solid pick. I had a huge interest in like biology, especially like this type of stuff, to the point where, like, you know, I'd heard a little bit about CRISPR and had read up on it, and immediately afterwards I'm still friends with like my high school AP bio teacher, and so we ended up having some discussions on Facebook about you know, about CRISPR and about just some of the new things that are happening. And it was a lot of fun, and it was also super accessible. Like this film at no point feels like it like beats you over the head.
Not boring either. Like some of these science-based or environmental-based documentaries can kind of you know, lose its audience because it's a little too dry. This one, even though it never tried to over dramatize anything, it kept the interest through the whole film, and that's saying a lot given the subject matter.
The documentary I'm gonna plug or talk about for our bonus round here is "Knock Down the House," a documentary about these 4 female politicians who ran as sort of political outsiders during the 2018 midterm elections. Each of them took on like more established politicians, but wanted to essentially seek change and seek, you know, new voices in the body politic. And so this documentary follows the 4 of them as they attempt to, you know, knock down the House, the House of Representatives. Those 4 that they follow are Cori Bush, Paula Jean Swearengin, Amy Vilela, and most notably, that most people would recognize would be Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC. And so it follows from the time that they announced their campaigns all the way through the results and the aftermath. Really stunning piece of documentary. They definitely were in the filmmakers were in the right place at the right time. So much so that after AOC, you know, beat Joe Crowley for the, you know, just for the chance to run, you know, just beat the Democratic incumbent. I think the New York Times or someone tweeted out like, yeah, man, I wish a documentary team had been following them. And they were like, actually, yeah, we've had someone following them the whole time, came out right afterwards. So Netflix ended up buying this film for very famously like $10 million. Like this has been one of the, if not the biggest Netflix purchase, and it's coming out on May 1st. So right around the corner, you can check out this story, and it's really solid.
Yeah, with a movie like this, you got to kind of strike while the iron's hot because the political landscape could change, and then it becomes, you know, like people don't really maybe care anymore because their spotlight has shifted, you know, to other things in the political race. So yeah, I can see them jumping on this right away, and it's another one that I hope to catch here on VOD pretty soon. So all right, Will.
Other question was, tell me about your favorite short film.
Man.
One, because we never give short films enough love.
We don't. All right, so I'm gonna pick one. This short film, and I don't. Here's what's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough talking about like who's involved with it because, it's a short film called Milton, and it's a comedy that was in one of the shorts programs. I think shorts program 3 at South by, and I can't really tell you who's in it, but I can tell you it's hilarious. And the situation is that this character, God, I can't remember if I got the name right, but he's this husband and wife team. They're going to see the wife's father who's in the hospital. He's dying, and it's like the husband is just always like in the way. He just can't. It's a very awkward situation comedy where he's just in the way, like whatever he does to try to comfort the family while they're there in the hospital room watching the dad pass away is the wrong thing to say, or he takes the wrong action, and it's hilarious. So it's called Milton. You know, if Where do people see shorts these days? Probably Vimeo, or that's typically where you'll find these. But
Yeah, I know there's like shorts channels, like not like television channels, but like websites that show shorts. And I think that Vimeo is one of them, but it is hard to find them. And and honestly, festivals, that's why people should go to see more festivals, because short films are a lot of fun, and it's a great place to see like really curated lists of good ones.
How about you, Will?
The one I wanted to plug, I didn't see quite as many, but there's one, and I guess disclaimer, I know the filmmakers, so like I always like to
I know what you're gonna say.
Yeah, I always want to disclaim that type of stuff, because I don't want there to be any like accusations of monkey business. But written and directed by Will Goss. If you're on film Twitter, you probably followed him there. But he did this short film called Sweet Steel, and it's about this depressed man who is thinking about suicide. It's a very dark story.
That's okay. I like my chocolate dark.
Well, yeah, that's perfect. And he realizes that before he can go through with it, he needs to do something else first. And it creates this sort of, I mean, obviously it's a dark story with a very relatable element. It's not dark for dark's sake. It's not like it doesn't dramatize. It doesn't what's the right word? Like it's not exploitive of this. If anything, it kind of taps into a very, when you're depressed and when you're kind of at these like low lows, just like kind of the weird things that you think about that are very, very human, but you don't often see like dramatized. And this is one of them. And so I don't want to go into kind of what that is, but it's a really, really good short. And it's one where the thing that I like the most about it is there's a lot of like shot efficiency. This is a get in, get out, tell your story short film, 5 minutes. And it has some pretty neat direction in terms of like how it cuts from sequence to the next sequence so that it doesn't drag out the runtime. So it's Sweet Steel. I know it's doing like a festival run. Like I think it's got Chattanooga or something like that coming up next. And other than that, just kind of keep an eye out because it'll probably be available.
Very good. I have an idea.
Go for it.
If you're on board.
Of course I'm on board. Yeah.
We saw so many good films. There's a couple more I want to mention. So let's do this. Let's do a speed round where we each get to mention 3 films we saw that we loved or liked, and only about 30 seconds each. How's that?
Do it. So right. Just like you go 1, 2, 3 through yours, and I'll do 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Go. The first one is called Alice. This is a French movie that was really good. All it says on IMDb is that she did everything right until it all went wrong. This is about a woman who's she's a young mother living in domestic bliss with her husband in France. And then all of a sudden, her husband ghosts her because he has a second life going. Interesting movie. I want to also mention there's a kind of a comedy crime drama buddy cop thing called Stuber. This is with Camille Nanjiani and Dave Bautista, who we know from Guardians of the Galaxy. We don't think of Bautista as being super funny, but we know Camille Nanjiani is, and he's very talented. And these two together, again, this is one of those odd couple cop. So Camille is an Uber driver and Bautista is a cop. And so it's kind of an odd coupling. And then one more I want to mention. I couldn't pass up this movie just because of the name. It was called Pig Hag. And I actually loved this movie. It's a movie about this. It's a character study about Jodie, a woman in her mid-30s. She's overweight, and she struggles with pressure to find a partner and have kids. She thinks she may have met somebody until he ghosts on her, and then it puts her in a tailspin. What I loved about this movie is 2 things. She's got a group of gay friends that she hangs out with that are hilarious. They're like the Fab Five, except in this universe. And also I met the 2 directors, really cool couple of dudes, Colby Holt and Samuel Probst, just like Jeff Probst. I don't know if he's related. Really cool guys. Like they took time to talk to me in the lobby. I'm going to be looking for this movie, and I think you guys should too. It's called Pig Hag. It's got some stern sexual stuff in it. and it's a very honest look at a character who's struggling with her identity. So Pig Egg, that's it. That's my 3.
Good 3.
Right.
My 3. Let's start with a documentary called Red Dog. This is a movie about this country songwriter guy named Luke Dick. He remembers his mother, like, he remembers his mother as you would remember your mother, right?
Yeah.
As anyone would remember their mother. But he gets a camera, goes back and films some interviews with her and some friends around, and finds out that she spent a good bit of her like early state, kind of early motherhood, like, like late teens, 20s, 30s, as a stripper at like this super popular strip club in Oklahoma City. So it's like 30 years later, this filmmaker is like going through things and finding out questions about what things were like for her. It's a touching look at the past, poignant in places, but more than anything, it's hilarious. Like the stories that that the mother and her friends tell of a time that it's just sort of out of control in some of the best ways possible. And it's neat. It reminds me of like, Jim, you'd like this if we're doing comparisons. It's like if Stories We Tell, that documentary, the Sarah Polley one. Yeah. It's like if you did that, but with like an Oklahoma mom stripper. Yeah.
What was the name of that one?
Yeah. This one's called Red Dog.
Red Dog. Got it.
Next one is called Greener Grass. God, I loved this movie. It's weird. It's the directors, writers, and the leads are a pair of women who were part of the Upright Citizens Brigade. So they have an improv background. So they created this story about these suburban soccer moms who live in this sort of like warped version of what you might consider like normal suburbia to be like, in that everyone is aggressively polite, goes out of their way to sort of like do things for other people, and it always leads into this like kind of absurdity that stacks on top of itself, always funnier. One of the first scenes of the movie is they're sitting in the stands, and one of them has a baby and the other one says, "I've always wanted a baby, can I have yours?" And so she's just like, well, I guess so. I guess you can have. And so it plays out the scene of just she reluctantly just kind of gives away her baby. And it's like, it's that sort of like weird crap all the way through. Not everyone's going to love this. I think this is going to be, for most people, either a 1-star movie or a 5-star movie, just because of how absurd it is. But for me, it was definitely closer to the latter.
I'll definitely watch it. It sounds like a little bit like Todd Solondz movie almost. Who I love Todd Solondz films, very edgy and kind of absurd. And the comedy comes out of those situations. It's not trying to be funny in your face, but yeah,
just with less dog shit.
Huh?
Just with less dog shit.
Just with less dog shit. Oh boy.
That was the last Todd Solondz movie I saw. Yeah. And then the last one.
Fuck that. Yeah.
The last one is Romantic Comedy, which is a documentary about basically someone looked at all the different years of romantic comedies, like the genre, and found kind of the common themes, the common tropes, the way that why we relate to them, and also some of the harm that they can do. This isn't a hit piece on romantic comedies, but it doesn't shy away from the fact that it creates unrealistic expectations for women, and that romantic comedies veer very much towards like white straight stories, and don't often veer as much towards like LGBTQ stories or stories about persons of color. And when they do, like, certainly it's a moment to celebrate, but also those are like much further, fewer and far between. It's called Romantic Comedy, and it's a pretty darn good doc.
Awesome. Well, great speed round. We got 6 movies in a few minutes. So
we sure did. And we are close to on schedule for everything today. This has been a lot of fun, Jim. Like, I could honestly talk South by Southwest movies with you all day. Obviously, we can't do that. But I think before we depart, Jim, can you tell us about another place that listeners might be able to hear some South by coverage?
Yeah, we got a couple things to plug. We got some more South by stuff coming up on this very podcast very, very soon. As a matter of fact, by the time this one hits the the podcast feed, there'll be another episode already up there. So when you hear this, it's already there. It's our interview podcast where we were invited once again to the Iron Bear in Austin on a nice Saturday to the Aglif brunch. Aglif is a film festival in Austin, Texas. It's the All Genders, Lifestyles, and Identities Film Festival. Its artistic director is a sweet guy named Jim Brunzel, who invites us to this brunch where filmmakers who are either LGBT themselves or are involved in LGBT films just hang out socially and celebrate LGBT film at South by Southwest. It gives us a tremendous opportunity to like talk to these filmmakers, and we've brought it up. Actors, directors. We brought it up in this episode several times. We got to talk to Melanie Hutzel and Sam Littlefield about Mother's Little Helper. We have a segment in this show coming up. We talk about with Fazia Mirza. She's a super fun filmmaker and writer and star of Signature Move. The cast of Garden Left Behind. We talked with Rusty. Please help me with this one. Tidenfeld, I think it is, about Why Can't I Be Me Around You? A tremendous documentary about a trans woman's journey from a life that she knew to another aspect of her life and just wanting to be accepted. The directors of short films, we've got like 6 or 7 interview segments on there on this next episode. So take a listen to what some of these filmmakers have to say. It's interesting because we interviewed these people before we had a chance to see the films. I'm sure our list of questions would have been much different had we already seen the films. And who knows? Maybe we'll get a chance to do that. But that's what Q&As are for. But yeah, check it out. Our episode previous to this, it's our South by Southwest Aglif LGBT filmmakers interview episode. So check that one out.
Yeah, Jim, that was a fun one to record. And listeners, if you want even more South by Southwest coverage, we have another episode coming up this upcoming Tuesday. Where we're going to be doing a double feature review. We're going to talk about the movie Us, which had its world premiere at South by Southwest. This is the movie, not the sequel, but the follow-up film from Jordan Peele, who directed Get Out, infamously from the Key and Peele comedy show, as well as he's the showrunner for the new Twilight Zone, which is pretty exciting. Stars Lupita Nyong'o, Winston Duke, and a cast of really talented actors. So you'll get to hear all of our thoughts about the movie Us, as well as we're going to be talking about the movie Dumbo. Disney has a new movie coming out this week, another one of its live action / CGI remakes of its popular brand of animated shows. This one is Dumbo, directed by Tim Burton. So you'll be hearing all of the news about both of those films this coming Tuesday. Please don't miss it. So, Jim, we're going to say goodbye here in a second, but I want, if you can you take a moment and just let the listeners know where they can follow you on social media?
Sure. They can find me on Twitter, where I talk mostly about movies and social and culture, pop culture, at JJP Out West, JJPOUTWEST. You can find me there or on my Facebook feed. Just look for my name, Jim Pugliafico.
Thanks, Jim. And of course, I'm William Lindis. You can find me on Twitter at Whatever Cove. I'm on Facebook. You can find me there. Just send me a note so that I know who you are and how you found me. There's a lot of like weird random ads that are happening right now where it's just like a person I don't know adds me. And so, I want to know that you're a real human being. And you can also find me on Letterboxd. Just look for William Lindis. You can also follow the show. You're of course either watching this on YouTube or listening to it through one of our audio feeds. There's a few different places you can find us and news about the Movieverse podcast. You can search for us on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube. You can find our episodes on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, on Spotify, and on our website, moviebearspodcast.com. Go check out like the things that we've written. Go check out some of our past episodes. We are 315 episodes deep right now. So if there's a film that you liked from the last, 6 years, 7 years at this point, go find our episode for it and let us know what you think. We always love hearing from you, the listener, so much. It's part of what we enjoy most about the show is the connections we make with all of you.
Absolutely.
Well, Jim, thank you so much. I had a blast talking movies with you today, and I'm excited that we get to do this again in like 3 days. So
yeah, it was good. It was good kind of reliving our South by experience because we, I just, I hold those times special when we get to together go see movies, and hopefully there might be an opportunity to do that coming up soon again, not at South by, but there might be something. You never know.
There might be something. That's something I may have already booked a ticket to, booked my flight to. So
yeah,
we'll
work on that.
Yeah, we'll have a local get together soon. But on behalf of the Movie Bears podcast, thank you all so much. We love you, listeners. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.